Well, good morning. A warm welcome to Frankfurt Airport. Today, we're flying with Discover Airlines down to Palma in a business class cabin. And unusually, we're on a wide body. So, an A330 service today down to the very favourite sunspot of many of us, Palma, Mallorca. If that sounds good, stay tuned. In the meantime, though, I'm going to see how many other views I can get of these. Well, welcome to the video again, and starting off the journey today at the Moxie Frankfurt Airport. Really good little hotel, clean, comfortable, fairly cheap too, and only about 6 minutes drive from Frankfurt Airport. And here we are now at the airport. It was pretty calm at the Lufthansa terminal, which of course our airline today, Discover, would use too, as it's part of the Lufthansa group. So yes, just checking we're definitely in the right place, and we are. There's Discover Airlines. Let's head inside to see this retro check-in board. I love these. It's very common at German airports. I really appreciate that they keep these going rather than having lots of digital screens showing you what flights are departing and when. The terminal at Frankfurt, really big, clean, and actually reasonably well laid out. It was really easy to find my way around. Big enough indeed to need a bike, it would seem. Lufthansa has its own shop there too. I'd never seen that before. Thought that was kind of cool. Anyways, if you were travelling business class, this is where you check in with Lufthansa. Discover has other desks that I didn't see, if I'm honest, but they were the other end of the same terminal. I didn't need to check anything in, so I headed straight for security. Of course, before you get to security, you're captured by duty free. But here's our jet for today. Now, having managed to avoid all of the treats on offer in the duty free lounge, I headed into the main airport. Again, really nice looking space, really clean and full of places to sit, and lots of amenities and shops as well. I have to say too, the views from the terminal at Frankfurt are exceptional. Everywhere you look, you are right up next to all of the jets. And here's a brilliant example, because there's loads of jumbo jets all over the place, which is quite rare nowadays, given most airlines have retired these aircraft. Look at how close they are. Now, having got my geekdom out of the way, it was time to go and find a Lufthansa lounge, which was included in my business ticket with Discover Airlines. And this is the Panorama Lounge, as it's called at Frankfurt. What an amazing space. I was actually surprised how quiet it was in the lounge. I found a seat easily, and there was a decent spread for breakfast. If you walked around the lounge a little bit more, behind the scenes, there were lots of these little tiny rooms. They almost look like a living room at your house or something like that. But there was lots of places to sit, rest and work. Plenty of power sockets available. And actually the food was pretty decent too. But the big tamale really was the views. I can see now why they call it the Panorama Lounge. This really was an unrivaled spot to watch arrivals, departures and jets taxi in here at Frankfurt. Amazing. Now, if you are into your jumbo jets or 747s, this really is the place to go. Look at them all, they're everywhere. Lufthansa is one of the biggest operators of the jumbo jet, and it's retained use of them thanks largely to the introduction of the 747-8. Now here's me taking a picture of what I thought was our jet, but it wasn't. We were at the gate, it was all fairly orderly to be honest, and as a business class passenger I was able to board amongst the first of the passengers. I was still a bit confused, but then the confusion soon drained away as I realised we were on a bus. And yes, we were on a remote stand. Perhaps not a massive surprise. This is ultimately a holiday airline, and perhaps it costs them lots less to travel people over to aircraft in the buses. What follows would be one of the longest bus transfers I've ever taken. Watch this. Now, the good thing about bus transfers, depending on which airport you're at, is that you can actually get an incredible view of some of the aircraft parked at the gates as you'll make your way over to your aircraft. And again, This one was no exception. Just what a view. No joke, this really was a really long trundle down to the other end of Frankfurt airport. We even had a race with this A321 at one stage. He was clearly the winner. And yes, here we are, arriving near Luxembourg, it felt like, at the Lufthansa cargo area, which is where our aircraft was parked. Now, all gripes aside, I do love boarding aircraft this way. You get up nice and close and get to get really brilliant shots of the aircraft. Just look at this, looks great against the lovely blue skies as well. Soon it was time to actually climb the stairs and get on board our 21-year-old Airbus A330. The usual confusion from some as we boarded, but a nice welcome. And here I am in my seat 5K. It's a nice looking cabin. It is an older cabin, an older configuration in a 222 layout. Not too bad for a 3-hour flight down to Palma. For a 21-year-old jet, I have to say, the aircraft was in extremely good condition. It may have been upholstered or something recently, but the seats, the carpets, and just the general feel of the cabin was of an aircraft that was much newer than 21 years old. Anyways, I plonked myself in my seat and was soon bought a pre-departure orange juice. There's plenty of legroom in seated mode, as you can see here, and there's also this little foot area where you can put your feet out, as I have here. A quick seat tour then. So the tray table comes out from the armrest and is pretty substantial. Bear in mind, of course, once it's out, that's where you're sat. You can't get in or out of your seat with the tray table out. There were some cubby holes down the side of the seat. There was another cubby hole in front of the seat underneath the screen. And then on top of that, there were no air vents, although the cabin temperature throughout the flight was actually really good. At no point did I feel too hot or too cold, so somehow they managed to get that right. Now, this may be an old seat, but it was quite a unique seat in my view, at least for me, because you got to adjust the cushion firmness. There were airbags inside the seat that made it either firmer or more comfortable dependent on your taste. There was also power outlets. There was no USB A or C that I could find. There was also this handy coat hook, which also had a really handy sunglasses hook too. Not seen that before either. It's actually a really good idea. You'll see though, that is a very thin space for your feet. We'll come back to that. Anyways, here we are pushing back from the cargo apron here at Frankfurt Airport. It did make it quite an amusing pushback, seeing us being loaded right next to all sorts of things that were bound for who knows where. Anyways, I'm sure it must be much cheaper for Discover to use this apron than to park at the main terminal. It was soon safety video time, and it was straightforward and really easy to understand, so that was over in a flash, and before you know it, we were headed out to the runway. It was nice to see a retro Condor liveried aircraft just there over on the left hand side as we made our way over to the runway. The other bit I just wanted to call out, I thought this was quite clever. I assumed I'd be able to see my neighbour's seat. I didn't actually have a neighbour on this flight, which was lovely, but as you can see here, they've got this very clever film so that you can't see what your other passenger is watching. I thought that was really good. Anyways, pray silence for the takeoff. Just listen to these beautiful engines get us aloft. A nice smooth takeoff and a good reflection of the Germans' commitment to solar power. over under the right wing there. So it didn't take us long to get up into the air, and before we knew it, we were in the cruise and headed down to Palma, Mallorca. There was Wi-Fi aboard, you got free messaging if you so chose, but also you could pay for a 2-hour premium version for €16, or for a whopping €27, you'd have premium full flight. I didn't bother with Wi-Fi, I was far too busy sampling services from the bar. Cheers! So with a G&T in hand, it was time to check out the entertainment system, and it was pretty good. There was quite a lot of older titles on it, but actually the more amusing thing was getting used to that remote control. The headphones though were really good. Soon it was time for another drink service. I did ask for a Bloody Mary, but they couldn't give me vodka without charging me, so I had a tomato juice and another G&T. The G&T was free. We then got brought out our meal. We didn't get a choice, there was no menu, but we had this salad, some gnocchi and some sort of dessert, still not sure what it was. It was okay. We had a nice cup of coffee which tasted lovely, and then very soon we were brought out a cookie as an extra part of our dessert. Overall, I'd probably give the catering about a 5 out of 10. So here I am resting up, and I'm trying to demonstrate that actually when you're trying to lay flat, it's pretty much impossible if you're tall. There's very little space for your feet. That said, there was a reasonable amount of shoulder room, as I'm showing here. I really appreciated too that I didn't have a seat partner. I can imagine it being a bit awkward if you're travelling with someone you don't know. Anyways, here's the 40-year-old virgin and one of my favourite scenes. Now, soon it was time to descend, and am I the only one that gets disappointed when we do start our descent? Largely because it means the flight's coming to an end. I was having a lovely old time. Anyways, it was a lovely day in Palma. The airport is somewhere under those clouds. Now, whilst this is an older configuration of business class, I will say how lovely it is to have 3 whole windows to yourself. So as we make our final approach into Palma Airport, let's discuss Discover Airlines business class. Now, it's a short haul trip, so not quite the full service that you'd expect on business class, of course. But for my short trip today, I thought the crew, I thought the price, and I thought the seat actually was all pretty good, pretty comfortable. Now, I think it would be a different story if you were looking at lay flat mode. It just wouldn't work for me as someone who is a bit taller. The seat's just not long enough. I also don't like it that if you were sat next to a stranger, clearly you'd be fairly close to them throughout a long haul flight. That's not always ideal, although if you're flying with your partner, I think this actually would be a really nice way to travel. The ground experience was pretty good, and it was great that I got access to Lufthansa lounges, and whilst the food was just okay, I appreciated at least that we got served food on board. The overall experience I thought was excellent though. The price was pretty reasonable when you take into account normal economy fares between intra-European airports, and we were on time and arrived to a beautiful sunny day. I know that's not down to Discover, but it certainly makes the flight feel that much better. So overall, would I fly Discover Airlines again? Absolutely. And would I fly long haul? Yeah, apart from the fact that the lie flat bed really for me wouldn't be lie flat, I'd absolutely choose them as a long haul provider. I should also mention that the pre-flight communications were excellent, and as part of Lufthansa's group, you also accrue miles too, which is quite unique for a holiday airline, I'd say. So that brings us to the end of the video as we draw up to our gate here at Palma, Mallorca. Thanks so much for once again travelling with me on my adventures. If you haven't already subscribed, please do consider doing so. I get around and want to share my adventures with as many people as possible, and if you already subscribe, as ever, thank you so much. Anyways, look forward to seeing you on the next one.